Good morning. Welcome to Emerson Unitarian Universalist Congregation. It is so good to be together with you here in person and online. My name is Rebecca, and I am one of today's worship assistants. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. As Unitarian Universalists, we're a people of diverse beliefs, but we share a common faith that every person is worthy of love, that what we do in this world matters, that we are connected to one another and to the earth. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here. This morning, Stratton is going to help us this morning. This morning we join with 1,000 plus Unitarian Universalist churches who begin worship with the lighting of a chalice. This marks the beginning of our time together as we create beloved community for reflection, compassion, and a celebration of today. In the spirit of love and the beloved community, let's share in our congregational affirmation. We need not think alike to love alike. Please take a moment to look around, greet and welcome each other to this new day. Those in the sanctuary, please feel free to move around to offer greetings. And for those online, please use chat to introduce yourself.
May those conversations continue in coffee hour. My name is Reverend Christina Branum-Martin. It is my honor to be the minister here and so good to be with you today. Lawrence McGinty wrote these opening words. To this house, we come bringing our boldest dreams, asking here the inspiration and strength to make them be. To this house, we come hoping to bury broken dreams and to be sustained through their pain and to discover the new ones amidst their tears. I hear a sad sound. And so I'm taking a breath and let's send that little voice some calm. Oh my. We come here lonely, like that little voice. Isolated, feeling isolated from meaningful human contact, and here we search for warmth and closeness and care, needing to grow beyond the plateaus of the commonplace. We seek here challenges and commitments. This house with these walls, here we come to cry and sing and laugh and hurt and dance and touch and survive and celebrate and grow and search. Here we come to become who we were meant to be. To this house we've come this morning. Let us sing together and rise in spirit, in voice, in body. And if you're online, we're singing Blessed Spirit of My Life, number 86.
Strength, stress, and strife.
We've come to the time where we share our joys and sorrows and concerns of this congregation. And Stratton will be putting the stones in the bowl for me. The stones in the bowl. Not bones. That's for a midnight service. Those stones are smooth, and they have weight, and they hold for us the things that we carry in our hearts sometimes that are heavy, but also the joys that smooth out the rough edges of our life, and the water receives them with calm. Each week you're invited when you come in to put a joy or a sorrow in this book, or share it online so we can include it in the service. And we have a few to share today. And before those, we will honor the Cherokee and the Muskogee nations of the indigenous peoples who lived here before us. We also acknowledge those who were wrongly enslaved and labored on this land for hundreds of years. And for all those hurting in the current conflicts and wars around our globe. I have a really fun one. It starts with a hip, hip, hooray. Melanie LeMay had a successful hip replacement surgery. It was this past Thursday, and Melanie is recovering at home. Her husband, George Clear, is feeding her well with gourmet cooking and spoiling her so much that she's tempted to milk her condition a little longer than necessary. Melanie is also grateful for her rock star physician, Dr. Stephen Kim, along with his staff, and appreciates all the good wishes that she has received from Emerson friends who knew about her surgery in advance. Thank you. This is a time where I want to acknowledge transition. We have some graduates who graduated from high school. We might even have children who graduated to the next grade. We might have some college graduates who moved into a new program, and we might even have people who have retired. So anything that is a big transition in your life, I invite you to stand. I had to figure out some way to acknowledge you, and I knew that was coming. I want to also share that Bellamy Bodiford had surgery this past week and is doing well in recovery with the support of many from this congregation bringing lots of food to the house. Bellamy is still waiting on complete diagnosis of what was removed in tumors, and we will know more in the following week. We have one from Patricia. For my sister-in-law, Gretchen, and her 2 daughters, my brother passed away yesterday. Please send prayers for them in this very difficult time. I'm sorry. And from Rebecca for Laverne Zolkowski, my childhood best friend's mother, who passed away Friday afternoon. She was the mother to all her daughter's friends, and made her home welcome to all of us through our childhood together. Will you put one last stone for those things that we haven't shared yet, the things that might not have found words yet? And we will close with the Buddhist prayer of loving kindness together. May we all be filled with loving kindness. May we all be free from harm and suffering. May we all be well in body, heart, and mind. May we all be at peace. Blessed be.
One way we put our prayer of loving kindness into action is by partnering with other organizations who work to bring love, kindness, and justice to the world. During Mental Health Awareness Month, which is May, Emerson Share the Basket partner is the Cobb County branch of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. NAMI Cobb provides education programs, support, and advocacy for individuals living with a mental health condition, their families, caregivers, and friends, as well as the local communities in Cobb County, while also supporting the 5 surrounding counties. This summer, Emerson is partnering with the NAMI Cobb to hold a class here at Emerson called Family to Family. This 8-week class, beginning in June, is structured to help caregivers understand and support individuals with serious mental illness while maintaining their own well-being. More information is in the Emerson newsletter. The basket will now be passed. For those in the sanctuary, as the basket is passed, please feel free to offer a donation or see a card in the basket for other ways to give. For those online, go to emersonuu.org and select the Giving tab to donate. All donations, unless otherwise specified, are shared equally between Emerson and our partner organization. We've got Lab 2 ready to go. Okay, try it now?
Oh, okay, I was holding it too long.
Yeah.
Hey, how you all doing? Clark. Okay, so today, or actually tomorrow, is Memorial Day. Is everyone excited about that? Yeah. Right? We get to celebrate fallen soldiers and service members, which is why I'm wearing my Sailor Moon shirt. Thank you for your service. And I'm going to tell you the real origin of that story, and it's not the version that you may have heard in school, but it maybe really happened. And this is actually a combination of 2 of my favorite stories about soldiers. First, there's Soldier Jack, which comes from, guess what country? Jack country. I like that idea. It's kind of true. It's from Georgia. As in like here, America. United States of America. Not to be confused with the other Americas. And another story, which also comes from Georgia, but it's so far east that it's in a contested area that's maybe Eastern Europe, maybe Asia, was for one part of time Russia, which is what we're going to call it today because it makes the jokes better. And that was the story of the Russian soldier. So, a long time ago, but not that long ago, there was a soldier named Jack that was coming home. And they were coming home because they wanted to visit their sister. It was their sister's birthday. So they went from their home of Russia over to their other home where their sister lived in Georgia. And on the way, the last stop they had to make was over at a mountain. And this was Mount Rush. And inside of Mount Rush, there was a little hotel that was named after the mountain. It was the Rush Inn. So Jack also really had to hurry. So our Russian was rushing to the Rush Inn under Mount Rush. And as soon as he burst through the door, he said, "Give me a room." And the man at the desk said, "No," because they were all full up. So Jack was kind of upset, but he didn't really plan ahead. He just kind of saw what luck gave him, right? So he looked around, and there at a table, he saw an old man playing cards. And no one else would play with this guy because he was really, really good. So Jack went up to him and he said, "Hey, how about if I can beat you at cards, I get to have your room for the night?" And the old man, his name was Nick, said, "Okay." He said, "Well, let's go start small first, right? What do you got to bet with?" And Jack said, "I got all kinds of stuff." And he pulled out his coat. He had loaves of bread, honey, muskrats, all kinds of things, right? So he put them up on the table, and they'd play a hand, and Jack was really, really good at cards. He was almost the best. But Nick was the best. So Jack lost. And he lost. And he lost. Until eventually, he didn't even have the clothes on his back. He was like literally there in his, what do you call them, like warm pajamas, the little,
Long John.
Lawn johns. There. He was just wearing his lawn johns and one boot. So he bet up his last boot to go win his other boot back. And he lost that. So Jack said, "Well, darn, I don't have anything else to bet. This isn't very fun." And Nick said, "You've got one more thing you can bet." Jack said, "What?" Nick goes, "Your soul." And Jack goes, "What was your name again?" He goes, "Well, they call me Nick. Sometimes they call me Old Scratch. I've also been called Bob Beazle." "Bob Beazle? Bob Beazle, Bob. Are you the devil?" And of course, Nick said, "Well, maybe." So this was good news, okay? Because they played one more hand. And Jack may have been almost the best card player, but he was the best in the entire world at cheating at cards. And cheating the devil is fine. It's completely guilt-free. It's a victimless crime. It's like downloading a movie off the internet. No one gets hurt. So that's what he did. And he won all of his stuff back and more, including Old Nick's magic sack. Right here. And the magic in the sack, which Old Nick begrudgingly showed him, is, "Well, you give it a whack," and you say, "Whackity whack, get in my sack." And you point to something, and it'll jump in the sack. So Jack did this. He was lazy, so this was great. He got rabbits all the way home. He got anything that he wanted. He just said, "Oh, that apple, whackity whack, whackity whack." And he was just whackity whacking all the way down until he got to his sister's house, right? And he got there, and he was excited. He goes, "It's going to be a nice big celebration." And everyone was wearing black, and he said, "That's a fashion choice." And all the mirrors in the house were covered. And when he asked his parents, "What's going on? Why is everyone all sad around here?" And they said, "Well, there's been something real sad happened last night. Your sister was visited by, that evil wizard that lives down the road who's also a vampire?" And Jack said, "Yeah, I know." And he goes, "Well, he put a curse, and she's not going to last the night." And Jack said, "Oh, no." So Jack went around to go find where this wizard went. And by night, he was walking down the path, and he got up right behind the wizard, and all of a sudden, the wizard was behind him. But Jack knew secret wizard signs that he learned, right, from his travels. And he flashed one of those, and the wizard said, "Hey, you're cool, okay." So when he was distracted, Jack pulled out a sack and whackety-whack into my sack. And the wizard, who was also a vampire, it's important, jumped in, and he was trapped. So it was getting close to morning. The cock crowed, or the crow cocked, whichever it is. And the sun was streaming out. And Jack said, you know what I got to do? Here's what I'm going to do. He went and he wove together a bunch of strands of garlic, right? And he said, I'm going to go tie the guy up with these. He won't be able to do anything, and he'll be able to take that curse off my sister. That's what he did. So he went uppity up out of the sack. And the vampire went up and said, oh, it's really bright. Oh, no! And he caught on fire. Because that's what happens to vampires in sunlight. They just burst into flame, and he turned into smoke. His final words were, what did you think would happen, you dummy? And Jack thought, oh, this isn't good. But he had one more plan. So he went and he waited behind the dresser in the room while his sisters are laying, just waiting to, pass on. And when death walked into the room, and death will appear as many different things to many different people. Sometimes it's a big old black dog, right? Sometimes it's a man in a suit. Sometimes it's a lady in white, could be anything. But death walked in, and this time it was kind of casual, just had a robe, a scythe, and it was a skeleton, And death approached the bed, and what did Jack do? He's like one trick for everything, right? Whackety-whack into the sack. So death zipped right in. And this is good, right? And everyone went and they partied for a few days. It went on almost an entire week, until they started noticing that there was a problem. Nothing was dying, like nothing at all, which created all kinds of issues, especially the soldiers that came over from the battlefield that was also like next door. And they're like, hey, dude, what's going on, Jack? We know this is you, okay? Anytime this kind of thing happens, we know it's you. And Jack was like, okay. So Jack had one final idea. He had to let death go. But he'd heard that if you challenge death to a game of chance or a duel or something like that, you can win someone's life, right? So he got ready. He got out his saber, he got out his pistol, and he got out his checkers, whichever, he was going to use. And he went uppity up, and death popped right back out. Now, death can appear as many different things to many different people, but today, death was horrifying. Death had on a sombrero. It had on a Hawaiian shirt, and it was holding a coconut with a cute little drink inside of it that had a straw and one of those little tiny umbrellas. Said death. Still a skeleton, though. And death said, what did you do, Jack? And Jack said, I don't know. And death explained that that was the best rest that it had since the beginning of time. That's why it was in the vacation outfit, right? It also had on like those beach shorts that Dad wears, you know what I'm talking about? And sandals with socks. So they struck up a deal, and he basically said, hey, you let me take a nap in there, maybe like once a year or so, and I'll let your sister go. So curse is gone, death is on their side, and it went like that for years and years. And the president declared this as a special, momentous Memorial Day. And on that day, nothing can die, except Jack lost the sack after a couple of years. So that's why things die again. Anyway, you said you want to do questions and stuff again, or? If you want to, you can.
Does anybody have a question?
We used to ask what's the moral of this? And they're like, no, I don't know if your stories have morals. But yeah, so. What is the moral? That's a good question. There you go. It's better to be clever than smart, I think. That's what I'd say. Yeah.
Memorial Day is a day that touches all of us. We live in a country where we have a roof over our heads, we have food to eat, we have the blessings of security, and I know that many people for many generations have worked hard to make that happen. For those of you who have served in the military, I would like to honor you today. I invite you to stand or raise your hand. I know there are a few in the room. Thank you. I know that the history of Memorial Day was one growing up where my great uncle put on his suit every year, let it out inch by inch over the decades to be able to fit into it, and would walk with pride until he was 94 in that Memorial Day parade. I know many of us have people in our families and in our own lives who are serving, who lost their lives, and may we honor them today with a moment of silence. Thank you. We've come to a time of prayer and meditation, and so I invite you to feel what might be weighing on your shoulders and to lower them and let it out. To take a breath, to feel the sacred space that holds us, and to feel our bodies soften into the chair. Reverend Alice Anacheka Naisman invites us to remember that in a world so filled with brokenness and sorrow, it is easy to lose ourselves in grief. It is easy to be choked by our outrage and to be paralyzed by suffering. Often we feel our hearts squeezed tight with hopelessness. So this morning, as we sit side by side, let us breathe together as we hold our hearts open. Breathing in as our hearts fill with compassion. Breathing out as we pray for healing in our world and in our lives. Breathing in, opening ourselves to the transforming power of love. And breathing out as we pray for peace in our world and in our lives. Breathing in hope. Breathing out justice for our world and for all who live on this world. May we know our strength. May we be filled with courage. May our love flow out into the world. Breathing in, we are the prayer. Breathing out, we are the healing. Breathing in, we are the love. Breathing out, we are the peace. May we know our strength. May we be filled with courage. And may our love flow out from us into the world. May this be our prayer. Amen and blessed be.
I learned this, at least, by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with success unexpected in common hours. He will put some things behind, will pass an invisible to establish themselves around and within him. Or the old laws be expanded and interpreted in favor of more liberal sense, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings. In proportion as he simplifies his life, the laws of the universe will appear less complex, and solitude will not be solitude, nor poverty, poverty, nor weakness, weakness. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now, put the foundations under them. That was an excerpt from Walden by Henry David Thoreau.
For many years, when I was a young adult, I would set my alarm to the radio rather than a buzzer. The familiar voices of the news stations such as NPR or Pacifica, Democracy Now! Or BBC accompanied my morning rituals of waking and listening to what was happening in the world, making my breakfast, pouring my tea. I would get connected not only to what was happening in the world, but perhaps the weather or the traffic. And I listened to the ways in which the world had their goals colliding. Sometimes the information on the news was informational, inspirational, and educational, but often they were not. Then, as it is often now, most of the news is hard to hear. The news of my city, my country, and the interconnected global economy is often difficult to learn about. As we all know, nice doesn't often make the news, right? It's the trauma and the difficult things that seem to drive the stories. So years later, after I was married and had a baby, I changed my buzzer to be what would come on instead of the news. And I remember those lovely mornings where my sweet little baby would be sleeping beside my husband and me, and then that baby turned into a toddler, sleeping beside my husband and me. And we would wake to the splayed arms and legs draped acrobatically across the bed in creative ways. My husband stayed home with the first few years of the first baby, and I went to work early in the mornings, and I caught up on my news in the kitchen and in the car. And I left that cocoon in the room, that cocoon of love and protection, on the bed with my husband and my child sleeping. As my oldest grew up and was able to understand language and story, the car then too needed to be a cocoon away from the things meant for adults. We kept the TV off because we wanted to filter what was coming in. It wasn't until years later that I ventured to turn the news on in the car or at home again, perhaps as we cooked dinner or worked together over the homework table. Because the news, that harshness, the realities of the human story, I wanted to cocoon my baby and my family. I wanted to be able to be the one to help learn what appropriate time it would be to tell the stories of our history. I wanted to be able to spin that sheltering cocoon for that child and then the later child that came. I wanted my babies to be shielded from the outside world. I still wish sometimes, even though they are older and they are learning about the world itself, I want to scoop them up, hold them tight, and I want them to gain their knowledge of the world and of people in small, simple stories, because I have seen their heart break as they learned of the history of our humanity. I have seen with compassion, sometimes tears in their eyes as they learn about things that are happening. And I think about that cabin that Thoreau built. I think sometimes I wish I could scoop us all up and we could move to a cabin. And you know, my mother did just that. My mother built a small, tiny house next to a river in Texas. And she lived very close to the land. She stopped listening to the news. She didn't get a paper. She said, I need my world to be right here. She built a fence and painted flowers on it. She put wild seed down in the yard and let the wildflowers grow. She even cut a labyrinth into the wildflower seeds and walked the labyrinth path. She went off the grid in many ways. She had solar panels, and she even considered a composting toilet, but that was further than she could go. The chickens would follow her in the yard. As the rooster in the bird song woke up, she was not listening to the beating of war drums. She was breathing deeply, knowing not of what was happening in the world. And in many ways, I was really jealous. But I also knew that I saw my own children seeking a way to bridge the need for protection and the need to change the world. When the weight of the world is heavy, sometimes too I want to run away. And so I look to the children, I look to the youth, and I see them making wonderful changes. I just saw a hand of a youth go up in the back of my kid waving hello. Thank you for the reminder. That is exactly what I need. When I want to escape to my cabin far off in the grid and not engage, what I need is the reminder of you. I need to know that I have seen my daughters and my children grow up, and my now son living in a world in which we are engaging with heart and compassion. They are taking the weight on of the world and doing so with grace. Those spun cocoons and daydreams of a cabin far away couldn't hold them. Maybe for a weekend, for a day or two off. But the world calls them to act and to move, and that is what our Unitarian Universalist faith does. It fosters in us to remember the energy of action. Our faith provides a framework that teaches our children and our youth and us, all of us, that we can change the world. And we do so with love. There was a question that my minister, when I was a teenager, proposed. He said the most religious question is, when you're not sure what to do next, you ask yourself, what is the most loving thing you can do in this moment? That has been my guiding light as a Unitarian Universalist and as a religious person. Let me tell you a little bit more about Henry David Thoreau. Henry David Thoreau was a Unitarian and the leader of the Transcendentalist movement. He was a well-established writer and an esteemed critic in New England, and he wrote on social issues like economic disparity, social welfare, and public education. And after years and years of writing, he decided one day to remove himself from all of it. You might have heard of the book Walden that he wrote about living on Walden Pond. He walked away from his life in Concord, Massachusetts to be reconnected to nature and to write, he said. He wanted to do this as a spiritual endeavor. He built a 10 by 15 cabin. That is very small, isn't it? A 10 by 15 cabin on the banks of Walden Pond, and that land was owned by his friend, the Unitarian minister William Ellery Channing. Thoreau's wife supported the venture and actually brought him food every week, which many people didn't know. He didn't grow and hunt all of his food. He had the support of people in his life. They didn't have any children, so he didn't abandon any children, but his wife brought him food, and so did his sister. And he explained that this spiritual endeavor was so he could go to the woods, he said, because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, to discover that I had never lived. He wrote and lived sometimes as I am called to, and he stayed in that cabin for 2 years, 2 weeks, and 2 days. Love that. He stayed without particular explanation for how long, but he wrote in a letter as he had decided to come back to society, if a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. During that time that he was at his cabin, sometimes his friends would come and visit or write a letter and question what he was doing. And he grumpily would answer, I have a great deal of company in my house, especially in the morning when nobody calls. My goodness. Thoreau grumpily retreated to that cabin to get away from it all, he said. But in so doing, that retreat allowed for him to find a reason, the reason for going there, And he said, perhaps for me is that I have several more lives to live, and I could not spare any more time for that one. When he came back to society, he wrote diatribes against the inequalities around him. One was the raging topic of slavery. Another was for women's rights. And the others were on living with the issues of civil disobedience. He became a public speaker on these issues. It's interesting, as a Unitarian Universalist, and looking back on Unitarian history, I think back to that time when we were called to live in a cabin to separate ourselves from society, and that dance that we still might have between, you've all seen the joke that how do you create sanity in our days? Not listen to the news, right? And yet we live in a life that is difficult, is complicated, and we are called to live every day with love that guides us in our next step. Sometimes I want to go back to my mom's little tiny house. I miss her wildflowers. I miss her chickens. I miss her labyrinth. I miss her solitude. But those feisty spirits of those kids around me, not just the ones that I'm raising in my own home, but the kids and the youth here, the young adults that are here, you remind me that each of us has dreams for this world, has a story of how you want to change the world, and you keep me going. This congregation is a place where each of us finds solace and sometimes come for retreat. But it is also where we come to find people like ourselves who want to change the world. We come and we sit shoulder to shoulder, and we sit in prayer and in silence so that we can find our way forward with our feet and our hands and our dreams. Unitarian Universalist minister Laura Horton Lugwood says the weight on our shoulders is heavy because we believe what we do matters, and that we are here because we believe how we live our life matters. That with every act of kindness, meanness, courage or fear, love or hate, we are weaving a fabric of the universe that holds us all. So we live with love that guides us with every step. Because here we need more encouragement, because so often we get distracted in the rush of things and the listening to the news and driving to the next appointment, that we forget that it is the steps we take one by one that lead us forward. This is our inspiration. That question, that religious question that I heard as a teenager from my then minister, Reverend Bob Shively, when you don't know what to do, reach down to the love inside of you and reach for the most loving thing to do next. That is the ultimate religious question, isn't it? The religious task then is to figure out what to do next and how to move forward. When I think of that, I think of an image of a threshold. Imagine a step through a door of a threshold worn by thousands of steps of the people who moved through that door before you. Have you ever been to an old building where you can see the threshold worn down, or old stone steps where you can see the marble pressed over time? When I need a reminder that I am not alone on my journey, I think of an image of such a step. Because together, we know our strength. Together, we are filled with courage. Together, we are the prayer. Together, we are the healing. Together we are the hope and we are the justice. And those young, feisty spirits out there of the children and youth, you are guiding my way. So I want to cross out of the threshold of my little cabin where I went off to find my solace and come out into the world to do the good work. And I know you're on that journey with me. And for that, I am so grateful. Let's go together on this journey. Amen and blessed be. Let's sing together, Guide My Feet, number 348. For all who see God, may God go with you. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. And for all who seek a right path, may a way be found and the courage to take it step by step. Robert Mabry Doss.
Stratton, will you help us again? Thank you. As our chalice is extinguished this morning, we extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. On the back of your order of service, you'll see second hour activities. And I have a little something to share. One of the things that's so wonderful about our congregation is how welcoming we are to our visitors. So if you are a regular attendee or a member of this congregation, would you kindly not park in visitor parking? And if you need, if we have a shortage of handicapped parking spots, please let us know and we can do something about that. But thank you very much. It's a very welcoming thing to do for our guests. Go now in peace and take peace wherever you go.
Amen.